Hello, I'm Josh Fedele, and this is a saxophone. What sights, sounds, or people come to mind when you see one of these? Perhaps you imagine a smoky basement bar filled with jazz pouring out into the streets, or that sax solo from your mom's favorite 80s hit, or the sweet, sweet sounds of the famous Kenny G. No matter what images came to mind, you're likely to be familiar with the instrument. Today I'll provide a little backstory on the saxophone and why I own one. To further foster our working relationship in class, it's important to communicate the origins of the saxophone, notable musicians and its history, and the personal effect it's had on my life. Because the more we understand about each other, the easier it is to work together. So now that you've seen a saxophone, and you're likely to have heard one before, let's find out where this instrument came from. Let's take a moment and learn about the inventor of the saxophone, the first major manufacturer, and who makes it today. Adolphe Sax was a Belgian musician who invented the saxophone in 1846 as an instrument that would bridge the gap between woodwind and brass instruments. In 1928, his saxophone factory was sold to Henry Selmer of Paris, France. The Selmer Company is still the foremost manufacturer of the saxophone, although there are easily more than 20 brands, a real tribute to its popularity. Now that you know where the saxophone came from and who makes it today, let's move to those people who have given it its distinctive sounds, the musicians. I'd like to discuss some of the more notable musicians in the saxophone's history, from the most influential to one of the most popular, and my personal favorite, that guy you've heard but never heard of. According to TopTens.net, Charlie Yardbird Parker was the most influential jazz saxophonist of all time. Bird was the leading figure in the jazz movement bebop. He collaborated with countless musicians like Dizzy Gillespie, Max Roach, and Miles Davis. One of the most popular saxophonists of all time would be Boots Randolph, best known for his tune Yakety Sax, which was prominently featured on the classic television show The Benny Hill Show. He also played the sax solo on Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. The third figure I'd like to discuss in saxophone history is Steve Gregory. Who's Steve Gregory? Doesn't ring a bell? I bet you've heard his famous saxophone solo on Wham's Careless Whisper. Or maybe you've seen the YouTube sensation Sexy Sax Man pay tribute to Steve in grocery stores, or laundromats, or even college lecture halls. I could go on and on about these musicians and many more who have made the instrument popular, but I wanted to focus on the ones that affected me personally. The music of Charlie Parker, Boots Randolph, and Steve Gregory convinced me that I absolutely had to play the saxophone. The saxophone has had a profound influence on my life. It started in the 5th grade, it then introduced me to my wife, and has given me an awesome career. In the last days of 5th grade, my teacher went around the room and asked if anyone was interested in signing up for chorus, orchestra, or band in 6th grade. I raised my hand and on a complete whim said, "Band! I'm going to play the saxophone." After I mastered my own sexy sax man moves in middle school, I used Careless Whisper to make a lasting impression on the high school ladies, especially my future wife, Rebecca. In 1996, I left college to begin my professional career as a musician and a saxophonist with the United States Marines. Military bands have taken me all over the world: Australia, Japan, Hawaii, East Coast, West Coast, and all points in between. Being a saxophonist for the military has provided me with a steady schedule, travel, and the means to provide for my family. I think it's clear the saxophone has been pretty good to me. And perhaps it's that guy you've heard but never heard of that I have to thank for choosing to play the saxophone and for playing that Careless Whisper for my wife back in high school. Today, you've learned all about my favorite instrument, the saxophone. I talked about its origins and its inventor, Adolphe Sax. I discussed the notable musicians, like the guy that played the George Michael song. What was his name? And lastly, I talked about the profound influence it's had in my life. Most importantly, introducing me to my wife, the mother of my children, my beautiful bride, Rebecca. I hope that the next time you see a saxophonist, or a saxophone, you think of that guy you met in speech class, and how he was the original sexy sax man. Thank you.